Some dinners end with coffee. Mine ended with my husband announcing he was done with me. What he never imagined was that I had already prepared something, folded neatly inside an envelope. Tell me, have you ever surprised someone who thought they had all the control? Share it below. Here's today's tale. My husband announced he was leaving me at dinner. He didn't expect my envelope. And believe me, the envelope speaks louder than words. For weeks I had felt it coming. The distance, the short replies, the late nights explained away with excuses too thin to believe. My husband, Robert, wasn't the man I had married. The warmth was gone, replaced with a kind of smugness I couldn't quite place. When he suggested dinner with friends, I almost declined. Something in his tone felt rehearsed, but I went, because after 30 years of marriage, you don't back down from suspicion. You face it. The restaurant was buzzing that evening, waiters carrying trays of wine, laughter drifting from nearby tables. Our friends chatted easily, raising glasses to celebrate promotions, anniversaries, little victories of life. I sat there smiling politely, but inside my stomach churned. Robert was too calm, too ready. Midway through the meal, as the main course was served, he cleared his throat. He placed his napkin carefully on the table, folded like a man preparing a speech. "There's something I need to say," he began, his voice smooth, almost theatrical. The table hushed, forks paused in midair. "I've decided," he continued, "that it's time for me to move on. I'll be leaving this marriage." The words dropped like stones into a quiet pond. Gasps fluttered around the table. One friend stammered, "Robert, are you serious?" He nodded solemnly, but there was a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. He wanted the drama, the spectacle. He wanted me humiliated, left speechless in front of witnesses. I felt every gaze shift to me. Some pitied, some curious, some waiting for the tears. For a heartbeat, I almost gave him what he wanted. My chest tightened, my throat burned. But then I remembered the envelope in my purse. I had seen this coming. Maybe not the exact scene, not the timing, but the betrayal. I had felt it in my bones, and I had prepared. So instead of breaking down, I reached calmly into my purse. My hand brushed against the smooth edge of the envelope, thick with papers I had been holding onto for weeks. Evidence, plans, my answer to his little performance. I placed my fork down gently and looked across the table, meeting his eyes. "Robert," I said softly, my voice steady, "thank you for your announcement. But since you've chosen this table as your stage, it's only fair the audience gets the full story." His smirk faltered. He hadn't expected a reply, let alone one delivered with such calm. I slid the envelope onto the table, resting my hand on it like a final card in a game. Around us, the room felt smaller, the air sharper. Robert thought this night would end with me broken. What he didn't know was that it was just the beginning, and the envelope would turn his little performance upside down. For a long moment, Robert just stared at the envelope. His hand twitched as if he wanted to snatch it, but he held back, not wanting to look rattled in front of our friends. The silence around the table was thick enough to cut. I took my time, sliding the flap open with calm precision. From inside, I pulled out a stack of neatly organized papers. His eyes flicked downward, and for the first time that night, I saw a crack in his confidence. "These," I said clearly, "are copies of financial statements. Bank accounts I discovered under your name, opened without my knowledge. Accounts you've been funneling money into for nearly a year." The color drained from his face. A murmur rippled around the table. One of our friends leaned forward, eyes wide, as though he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Robert tried to chuckle, but it came out strained. "Darling, this isn't the time." I cut him off, my voice sharp but steady. "You made it the time. You wanted to humiliate me here, tonight, in front of them. So let's tell the full story." I placed another sheet on the table. "This is a copy of the retainer agreement with my attorney. Divorce proceedings are already in motion." I anticipated this little performance, Robert. I just didn't know you'd be foolish enough to do it here." The room was utterly still. Claire, one of our oldest friends, whispered, "My God." Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his mask of control slipping. He reached for his wine glass, but his hand shook, sloshing liquid onto the tablecloth. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. "You thought I'd be blindsided, that I'd sit here in tears while you played the victim or the hero. But I don't play by your script anymore. The house, the accounts, the assets. You've left a trail, and I've already secured what matters most." Gasps sounded again, louder this time. Robert's mouth opened, but no words came. I slid the envelope across the table toward him, papers spilling slightly from the edge. "Go ahead, read them later. You'll see just how much I know." For the first time all evening, he looked small, not powerful, not smug, just a man exposed. The waiter arrived awkwardly with dessert plates, eyes darting between us. No one touched the food. The dinner was over in every sense of the word. Robert pushed back his chair, his face pale. "We'll discuss this later," he muttered, trying to salvage some dignity as he stood. I remained seated, my friend's eyes on me now, not with pity, but with something closer to admiration. For once, I wasn't the woman at his side, nodding silently. I was the one holding the cards and the evidence. And as he left the restaurant, envelope clutched tightly in his hand, I knew this battle was no longer his to control. When Robert stormed out of that restaurant, clutching the envelope like it might bite him, the entire table sat in stunned silence. For a few seconds, I could feel every eye on me, waiting to see if I'd crack. But instead of tears, I simply folded my napkin, set it down, and took a long sip of water. Then slowly the whispers began. Claire, who had known us for years, leaned closer. "I don't know how you stayed so calm," she said. If that were me, I would have screamed. I gave a small smile. Screaming is what he expected. Calm is what shook him. The others nodded, murmuring their agreement. And just like that, the humiliation he had planned for me turned into quiet respect. When I got home that night, the house felt eerily still. His coat was gone from the rack, his shoes missing from the mat. I didn't panic. I just walked into the study, sat at the desk, and opened my own copy of the documents. Page after page of transfers, withdrawals, secret accounts, every piece of evidence I had gathered over months. I imagined Robert in some hotel room, tearing through the envelope with shaking hands, realizing his secrets weren't secret anymore. The thought didn't make me happy. It didn't make me sad either. It just made me feel free. The next day, phone calls began. He rang first, 6 times in an hour. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts, a mix of anger and pleading. "How dare you ambush me like that?" one read. Another, "We can still work this out, just don't make it ugly." But there was no working it out. He had chosen the battlefield, and I had simply arrived better armed. By the weekend, our friends were buzzing. Word had spread quickly, how he tried to blindside me, and how I'd turned the tables with one envelope. Some offered sympathy, others admiration. A few even confessed they'd long suspected he wasn't as faithful as he pretended. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one living in his shadow. I felt like myself again, steady, prepared, and unafraid. That evening, as I stood by the window watching the sunset pour golden light across the yard, I realized something important. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of silence. Robert had expected me to play the role of the obedient, blindsided wife. But with one envelope, I rewrote the script. And now, the next act would be mine alone. Robert didn't go quietly. Men like him rarely do. Within days, he was back at the house, knocking hard on the door as if he still owned the place. I opened it only a crack, enough to meet his eyes, but not enough to invite him in. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and urgent. "There's nothing left to discuss," I replied evenly. He tried to push, his tone shifting from pleading to threatening. "You think you've won because of that envelope? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. But I can fight back. I'll take the house, the savings. You won't have anything left." I held up a hand, calm and steady. "You already tried that, Robert. The bank statements, the hidden accounts, they're all documented. And the attorney I hired? She's already filed the paperwork. You don't have ground to stand on." For the first time, I saw real fear flicker in his eyes. Still, he wasn't ready to let go. He tried calling mutual friends, painting himself as the victim, saying I'd been plotting against him. But the story didn't stick. People had seen the truth play out at dinner. They knew who had been betrayed and who had been lying all along. At night, I sat with my lawyer on the phone, going over every detail. The house, mine. The retirement accounts, protected. His hidden savings, frozen. Each revelation was another brick pulled from the tower of control he thought he had built. Meanwhile, Robert's messages grew more desperate. First came anger. "You'll regret this." Then came bargaining. "Let's just split quietly. We don't need lawyers." Finally came pleading. "Don't ruin me. Please." But I didn't answer, because the truth was, he had already ruined himself. One afternoon, my daughter stopped by. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Mom, I can't believe how strong you've been through this. I thought he'd crush you, but instead, you stood taller than ever." Her words filled me with something I hadn't felt in years. Validation, not from Robert, not from friends, but from the people who mattered most. That night, as I locked the doors of the house, I realized the battle was nearly over. Robert had tried every trick, charm, anger, threats, but none of it worked anymore, because he hadn't just lost control of the marriage, he'd lost control of the story. The final hearing came on a gray Tuesday morning. I walked into the courthouse with my attorney by my side, the folder of documents clutched firmly in her hand. Robert was already seated inside, shoulders hunched, his once perfect suit wrinkled from too many restless nights. When the judge reviewed the evidence, it didn't take long. The hidden accounts, the transfers, the deception. They painted a picture Robert couldn't argue against. He tried, of course, stumbling through half-truths and excuses. But each time, my attorney slid another document across the table, calm and precise. By the time it was over, the ruling was clear. The house remained mine. My share of the assets was protected. His secret accounts, frozen until further investigation. As the gavel struck, Robert's head fell into his hand. The man who once announced my humiliation at dinner had now been stripped of his stage. I walked out of that courthouse into the cool air, my lungs filling with something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Not just freedom from him, but freedom from the shadow he had cast over me for decades. That evening, I stood in the doorway of my house. The keys felt heavy in my palm, a symbol of everything I had fought for. The walls seemed brighter, the air lighter. For the first time, this place wasn't a cage. It was mine alone, filled with possibility instead of pain. Robert tried calling once more that night. I let it ring. His voice was nothing but an echo now, fading with each unanswered call. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine, sat at the kitchen table, and wrote in my journal. I wrote about betrayal, about strength, about the envelope that had changed everything. But most of all, I wrote about dignity, the kind that can't be taken, only reclaimed. In the weeks that followed, friends came by, curious, supportive, some still shocked at how it had all unfolded. I told the story only once, simply without drama, because I didn't need their pity or even their praise. I had something better. I had myself, and that was worth more than any secret account, more than any cruel laugh, more than any marriage built on lies. Robert thought he had written the ending of our story at that dinner table, but he was wrong. The envelope wasn't the end. It was the beginning of mine. In the end, my husband thought he would humiliate me with a single announcement at dinner. But what he never understood was that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means preparation. And the envelope I carried that night wasn't just paper. It was proof that I was stronger than his betrayal. He lost his stage, his secrets, and eventually his home. I gained something far greater: freedom, dignity, and the knowledge that I could stand on my own. To anyone listening who has ever been blindsided or belittled, remember this: you hold more power than you realize. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to open your own envelope and reclaim your story. Thank you for watching Elder Words. Please like, share, and subscribe for more stories of strength and second chances.